Should we change the channel?
Well, I think we have to.
All right. And I get we were missing someone this week. We should address this at the top of the review. Everybody's going to ask about it anyway. It was Jim Ross, there was Tony Schiavone, and Taz was on color. Excalibur, mask or no, was nowhere to be seen because he's got his own fucking controversy now going on. You've heard about this.
I have.
Apparently now Excalibur has said unsavory things in the distant past on tape that he is being crucified for. And everybody's going to, oh, here we go. Cornette's going to jump in this. Yes, I am, with both fucking feet. For fuck's sake. Just like it was fucking ridiculous when everybody thought that Sammy Guevara should be sent to jail for saying something 4 years ago because it was stupid. Now they've got videotape of Excalibur in multiple occasions saying the N-word in relating to wrestling fucking angles and programs that he did with his little rec center play group out there in Los Angeles 15 years or so ago or more. This is a classic example of what's been going on lately. Do I think Excalibur is a shitty announcer? Yes, I do. He sounds like a mark in his basement with his friends calling matches over tapes of actual matches. Do I think he was a rotten outlaw wrestler? Yes, I've seen a few clips of him on their play promotion out there, and he pretty much looked like he sucked as a wrestler. Do I think he's one of the worst gimmicks ever because he refuses to take that stupid mask off for his fantasy creation when he gets a job on national TV that somebody might have taken him serious had he chose to become a real person? I believe all that also. Do I believe that he's a racist and hates all black people because he used the N-word in wrestling angles? Absolutely not. I just think he's more of a fucking idiot. The language that he used was because back then you could get by with it in these outlaw promotions because they weren't on television. They were barely on videotape. They had to do that themselves and then fucking sell it back on VHS and then fucking circulate it around. But was he being an asshole and a douchebag and an idiot? Was there any need for all that stuff? No. But do I think because of that he's a racist and hates all African-American people? No, I just think he's a fucking idiot. Same thing as I didn't think that Sammy Guevara really wanted to rape Sasha Banks. He was a kid and said stupid shit. Same thing as when I told a joke, a recycled Evel Knievel joke about fried chicken in Ethiopia. There was no glimmer of thought in my mind that anybody would think that I somehow hated black people from that. But it all depends on who is listening and who they want to fucking dislike and who they want validation to believe is an asshole or not. And in this case, many people are excusing Excalibur because, well, it was 17 years ago. Okay. Well, then, if that's the case, then everyone has to admit that my documented issue with the N-word, which was 26 years ago, doesn't count either. See, everybody said, well, Cornette, he never talks about that on his show when he used the... Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I have on more than one occasion, but we don't play it on a loop at the start of every program for the people who are not caught up on the episodes. It's not my fault you've missed shit. It's not something we do every week, cover everything we've ever talked about. But I have addressed it in that, yes, I used that word while in a physical altercation with someone and then used that word in a private group to relate said confrontation, and that's the tape that's out there. And in that unedited tape, I did mention that I shouldn't have called the guy that, but since we were in the middle of about a riot about having gone on, the tempers were flaring. And I've also said since that time, we have all learned not to use that language, and we don't anymore. And I've also said when other people have been accused of saying shit, Hulk Hogan was in a private situation, well, he thought it was a private situation, but he was not in any way in an altercation or a fight or in an inflammatory argument. He was just using that language. So yeah, blister his ass. Blister him good. But of course, he's the Teflon Hulk. Like everything else, he's escaped all of that and put Gawker out of business. Now has more money than he ever had before when he was broke at one time. Do I think that just because someone uses a word in any context that you should condemn them before you examine what the context was? I've mentioned Tessa Blanchard. She's supposed to have said all these things. Well, what was the context? Did somebody just drop her on her head first, or did she just walk in the locker room one day and start spouting off slurs at people? You need to figure these things out. They need to be there. While there are excuses or there are explanations for sometimes things people say, that doesn't mean that they're excuses, but just explanations. So even though I have apologized for words I've used in the past, when I was in the middle of a fucking fight with somebody, you must admit that when somebody is actually in a physical fight with somebody, a lot of shit gets said, and it's somewhat understandable, especially after somebody might have just punched you in the fucking face. But while I do not think that this guy, as I said, is a racist and hates all black people because he used this word, I think now that he's a bigger idiot than I've ever thought of him before, because they were doing this in a wrestling angle, at a show, on the microphone, on tape. It wasn't real. He wasn't really mad. Nobody was fighting for legitimately. Nobody was scuffling and in pain and tempers flaring. They planned to do this, to be edgy and cool or whatever. And it wasn't even the Vince McMahon usage of the N-word where it was supposed to be comedy and he was trying to be cool and hip in front of Booker T. It was just well, you got you an F and N-word for a partner. How did anybody think that was going to fly in a wrestling angle? Hey, here's another thing. All the goddamn guys in the 80s, apparently I've heard, were all coked up and drunk and carnies and fucking pieces of shit and steroid freaks and racists and kept people down and did this and that and the other thing. And as we talked about with the Joey Ryan situation, all these other people coming out, the modern generation was doing a lot more fucking unsavory activity than the older guys were. We were all in on it together, the guys and the girls, having fun with each other. And we protected the girls that were in the business. These people have no female fans, so they have to fucking prey on the girls that are in the business. And we find out that the modern generation is more unsavory of a sexual nature than all us horrible old people were back in the caveman days. Now we find out that the modern generation also, that's supposed to be so racially tolerant and so considerate of other people's feelings and all-inclusive, they've used worse language than all of us cavemen did back then, too. Find me, Brian, find me one television program from the classic territory days of any wrestling promotion that ever used the N-word. I'll wait. Can you go through the Rolodex real quick? Oh, that's right. It didn't happen. Just like when I was first told, when I first got into business, you don't fucking use profanity on television. You don't fucking use profanity when you're at ringside. Christine Jarrett would have tanned my hide if I'd have said the F word on one of her shows out loud. Now, I will tell you, all through my career and through everybody else's career, the one-on-one confrontations when you're on a crowded aisle to the ring and back, there was plenty of F-bombs and all kinds of words going on there when people were spitting on us and we were cussing them back and etc. But once you got out there where people could see you and hear you, you worked clean because you were in front of families and mainstream people. And if it wasn't on television, it was still a house show and the promoter didn't want that kind of heat. So you didn't use the mildest of profanities. And guys who went overboard, especially if it happened on the microphone, would get chewed out by the office, sometimes fined, told don't let it happen again. Find a time, find an instance where I, me, the king of the F word, on wrestling television or on something that was going to be videotaped for widespread distribution, used any kind of profanity past the dams and the hells and the things you could get away with at that time every so often. I didn't, because it wouldn't play, and it got heat of the wrong kind. When I got to Ring of Honor and I found out that, they can cuss and they say all these things, I'm like, fuck, I had to fucking force myself to keep up in some cases, because I was like, you can say that shit? Yeah, it's all fucking guys between 20 and 40. They don't give a shit. But it's like now that they've figured out they can say shit and son of a bitch on TNT, so every segment has shit and son of a bitch. Pretty soon people get used to that. But anyway, once again, it's a classic example of the modern generation knocking all of us for doing all these horrible things when we didn't do nearly all the horrible things that all the modern generation does, come to find out. So, no, I'm not going to crucify this guy, say he ought to be, he should have been canceled long ago for being a bad fucking wrestling announcer. But should he be canceled for saying this on a tape in an outlaw mud show 17 years ago? Do I think he's a racist? No, I just think he's an idiot. And I think that's why that's why you have the AEW television show that you see today, because they all came up doing these do-it-yourself shows and were never taught by people who were proper professionals. Good Lord. What a fucking... Do you want to weigh in on this at all?
Well, I'll say that I personally don't believe there's any excuse to ever use the N-word. Now, with this Excalibur story, from what I gather, obviously it was years ago in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. And as many of us know, if it happens in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, if it's negative, it doesn't count. But if it's positive, it's changing the business. But no, all kidding aside, I was told that this was an angle. It was him and Kevin Steen versus, did you ever see the Human Tornado, named after the Rudy Ray Moore film, The Wrestler?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I think he's one of the guys, they booked him in Ring of Honor one time. I think back when Adam Pearce was booking, and he was on the format, and they said that he called up Adam a day or two before the show and said he'd retired from wrestling. I think that's the same guy.
I think that sounds correct. But it was a program with him where, from what I was told, he wanted them to make it a racial program. And I'm not saying they should have done it, but that's what I was told. Again, I don't think there's any reason to ever use the term, but context does matter. This is an old tape from years ago of Excalibur using it, not to, as bad performance art. I guess that's really the best way you could say it.
Yeah, well, if the guy said, hey, I'd like you also to fucking sodomize me with a rusty fishing knife, you think they might have said, well, we probably won't do that, or just gone ahead with it?
Now, this is Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Promotion, at one point, I believe Joey Ryan owned a piece of.
Well, basically, a bunch of independent guys, about 4 or 5 or 6 of them, got together and pooled their money so they could run their own shows and do what they wanted without anybody telling them they couldn't do this shit because they didn't know how. That's how PWG got started.
The point is, there's a large amount of people in AEW who started there or wrestled there regularly or were flown in to wrestle those shows. I have to believe that Tony Khan has seen a lot of those shows. I know that other people involved with that company have seen a lot of those shows. These tapes of Excalibur aren't a new thing. They have been passed around. They've been in circulation for a while. There's even been footage of him in a wheelchair pretending he was handicapped. But it all happened a long time ago. I have a tough time believing that it took AEW by surprise that these clips were out there. What do you think about the idea? We don't know if he's been suspended or anything. With Sammy Guevara, there was an announcement. Sammy Guevara has been suspended. He's going to go to counseling to help him understand what
with Linda Hogan, she was banned. Hulk Hogan was banned.
Sammy Guevara suspended, needed counseling. Nothing has been said about Excalibur. He just wasn't on the show last night. What is the appropriate way to handle this? Should AEW not do anything because it's so long ago and it was a wrestling angle? Should they address it? Should they put out a statement saying that He's suspended. He's going to go to counseling for sensitivity issues. I mean, that's the point. What is the standard?
No, what they ought to just say is, God damn it, everybody in this business and everybody walking this planet has said some stupid shit and some unsavory shit over the course of their life. So unless somebody can come to us with specific proof that someone has acted in a malicious manner to somebody else because of their race, creed, or color, then otherwise, just shut the fuck up and leave us alone. And yes, he is a bad announcer, but we started him, so we're going to fucking keep him. Because what the fuck? Are you saying, if you're going to penalize people for saying stupid shit, especially in the past on videotape, then start with the president of the United States, for fuck's sake, because nobody's dumber than he is. He blurts shit out constantly that most people wouldn't want to hear. It's gotten ridiculous. If somebody legitimately, actively works toward the persecution, downtroddenness of works against a group of people because of their race or color, they should obviously be fucking dealt with. For everybody else that said something stupid on a fucking home video 20 years ago, I think we got bigger fucking problems. This whole thing has gotten ridiculous.
Is this the perfect time, though, to have him come back without the mask?
Boy, I would, and I'd change his name, too, while I was at it.
No, but seriously, I mean, these videos are him in that mask,
yeah,
doing these promos. It's a perfect time for him to come back without the mask and just say, you know, I've done stupid things in my past, but I want to be real with everyone. Here I am. Look at me in the flesh.
I think they ought to just have take the mask off, have him shave the fucking goofy little beard, and next week they can introduce their new color man, Festus Kefauver. And he's never been here before. And just start over. Oh, God. All right. Anyway, so Excalibur wasn't there.